Okay, Sandra?
Yeah.
Okay, you have to mute your phone. Okay. We're good.
Good morning, everybody. Today is March 27th. The time is 10 a.m. and I'm welcoming everybody to the Curriculum Committee meeting. All members are present with Ms. Green on the phone. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, 4-0. Thank you. Approval of the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. 4-0. Middle school literacy proposal. Dr. Rogers?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, board members. We are seeking approval on our middle school literacy proposal. So this proposal will position our middle school English language arts teachers to be prepared to start next year aligning their literacy work to the science of reading through professional development. So as you know, our K-5 teachers have been implementing science of reading practices for 2 years, and we have looked at how the science of reading impacts middle school literacy, and we have a proposal to present today. So I will kick it over to Casey Rimmer, who is our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Good morning, Casey.
Good morning. I'm just sharing my screen real quick. Thank you. I am going to go ahead and present. I have just a couple kind of summary slides that I'm going to share with you today. And Dr. Rogers kind of kicked us off pretty well with, really the mission is to align our middle school literacy work to the science of reading. And as you know, our K-5 teachers have really done a lot of work in the last several years to align that work, their literacy work to the science of reading. And so this is kind of where we've gone. And so I want you to know that this has been a very long process and we've included a lot of folks in the process. So we took 15 months to develop this plan and come up with really what was the best fit for our district and our teachers. We had what we called a literacy vision team that we gathered. It had ELA teachers from middle schools. All middle schools were represented. We had administrators from several middle schools. We also brought in our AIG department, our EC department, and various other instructional support and academics team members to be able to kind of talk about what it was we needed and what direction we wanted to go in. So as you know, our pre-pandemic trend was already kind of negative in middle school ELA. And after COVID, it started getting higher numbers in the negatives, right? So our trend was still falling behind, but falling towards the state average, right? So you've probably seen this data before, but I really like this document or this comparison. You can see here that the purple line is the pre-pandemic trend. And so that was already kind of scaling down. And so in sixth grade, right, we're not climbing nearly as quickly as we're climbing in third grade. And we attribute that to some of the work that our third grade teachers have been doing around the science of reading. So what can we do to get that sixth grade line to be climbing faster post-pandemic, like the third grade line, right? So we kind of explored all kinds of resources. We looked through, we talked about all of the things that our teachers needed, and all schools were represented with our vision team. We also sent surveys to all of the teachers, whether they were on the vision team or not. We had focus groups. We had representatives from the schools go back to their schools and gather feedback for us. And so really where we ended up was that we were really looking for this jumpstart opportunity. And we got this idea because we had a jumpstart last year for some of our schools that had a need to kind of really dig into aligning lesson plans and really working hard to unpack the standards and really make sure that the alignment was there. And so based on that success of that professional development, we've actually called this Literacy Jumpstart. And really it would give our teachers an opportunity to dig into the ELA instructional framework, which was developed out of the work of the Vision Committee. And the instructional framework is new based on the science of reading. And think about that as like, how much time do you spend doing independent reading? How much time do you spend working on vocabulary? Taking all the pieces of science of reading, put it together for a block of ELA in a middle school classroom. What does that look like, right? Also introduced during this, you'll see on the slide, is the literacy instructional standards. And those came from DPI, from the state. And basically, we have agreed to implement those literacy instructional standards into our middle schools. And this is our plan for how we're going to do that, right? So some of those, the LIS, we've been really working with our teachers to make sure that they're familiar with what the LIS are. But this is really not just familiarity, but application of the literacy instructional standards and application of the science of reading when they are working through with their PLC for literacy. So you can see those are kind of the objectives listed on the left side of that table. And on the right side, so our plan is to host 2 cohorts over the summer that would give teachers a jump start to get started with some of this work, right? They would be given a stipend to attend. They would have a couple options. And this attendance is not really mandated. It's not that they have to come during their summer, but it would give their PLC a jump start while they're planning, right? While their PLC works together each week to plan what they're going to do for the next week. It would really help support those folks in some of that work. And so not only do we have some of this work mapped out for, this is called week 0, right? But we also have work opportunities during district work days. We call that professional learning series, where we have teachers kind of attend a series of events. It would also dip into the district PLC work that we've seen a lot of really great success with specifically our 6th grade ELA in the district. And it would also kind of work into the weekly PLCs and how do we support teachers who are trying to really shift how they're teaching literacy, and what does that look like, right? And so they've got this framework, they've got the LIS, and they've got the research from Science of Reading. And so we're really giving them an opportunity to work together to put that all together so that they can implement it. It's kind of like, how do we apply all these things that we know? And we have been talking about the LIS standards. We've been talking about the Science of Reading. In fact, we have several modules that are available online right now that several of our teachers have already taken to kind of build some of that background knowledge around the Science of Reading. They recognize too that some of those students who have been learning reading and in elementary, right, are coming to them. And so they recognize that they need to shift their practices so that they can support the readers that are coming their way, that have kind of been, we've changed the way we're thinking about teaching literacy in 3-5. So really, this is kind of week 0 of our plan. This would not be all of it, right? We would also support them ongoing throughout the year with all kinds of modalities, whether that's face-to-face, online, virtual, across district, in their schools, things like that. And then really the last slide is we really need principal support in this to make sure that the PLCs are planning and shifting the instructional into reflect the new instructional framework for literacy, and monitoring that success and giving us feedback so that we can make sure that if there are roadblocks or there are stumbling points, that we can make sure that our PD reflects, making sure that we address some of those things. Professional development attendance will help this, right? Obviously, as with all initiatives, and we will have multiple modalities. I already said that. So that's kind of what our plan is. If you would like me to go back to another slide or you have questions specifically, I'm happy to entertain some of those questions.
Yes, and there's a memo has also been uploaded in board docs as well with some details for this plan.
Does anyone have any questions?
No, ma'am.
So are the principals wanting this?
So
I mean-
actually, most of our middle school principals, over half of our middle school principals were on our literacy committee, our vision team, to help write what this plan was.
Okay, but it says principals must be ready. They should.
We
Do
just
it.
mean to support, to monitor, to make sure they're ready for this work. We just need their help in making sure that this is what PLCs, we're not in PLCs every day, or in buildings, to make sure it's honestly, this statement could be true about the change in science curriculum, right? And the change in the science standards. This would really stand true for that too. We need to know, because we're not in schools every single day, to know if teachers are doing the new practice or if they're dipping back into the old practice.
I have a question about the student resources. What exactly is that going to look like?
So essentially that is things like, we use a product called Common Lit, which is short stories and things like that. It is something that we've used for several years, and we've mapped many of our curriculum resources mapped to Common Lit. There is a cost associated with some of those. Some of them are text sets. So we would buy a new set of class books so that they could apply the LIS to a new set of novels for the class, or poetry, or things like that. So just a little bit of a refresh for some of the materials that are student facing that align with some of this.
So it's not actual text for the students,
There would not be a
like
textbook
textbooks? No.
for
Okay.
ELA for middle school.
Okay. And then was there any thought to making this a virtual option for the teachers, or is?
So at this time, we've not really thought, because one of the main pieces is working with other ELA teachers from across the district and applying and having some of that conversation. So that collaboration and that team time is really, I think, going to be the most fruitful part of some of this work. And so that's just really hard when you're virtual.
Yeah.
While you could get some of that, we just feel like in-person modeling and having conversation and dialogue about some of these shifts is really the most beneficial thing for our teachers.
And you got input from teachers, you said that they're on board with this
We did.
for the summer. Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, I need a motion to send this to the full board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't know if Sandra can hear right now.
Sandra?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sorry, I'm having a really hard time with my computer and my phone, so it's really, sorry.
Okay.
I'm listening, it's just cutting in and out.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, next is the multilingual learners update presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Tyson is here to kind of set the stage for our multilingual learner update today. Good morning, Dr. Tyson.
Hey, good morning, and thank you, Dr. Rogers, and good morning, board members. Of course, earlier in the fall, you heard a very similar presentation from Dr. Daniels about the rapidly growing number of multilingual learners that we are serving here in Union County Public Schools. Today, we've asked her to return to this committee to provide an update. You know, the purpose of this presentation is really nothing more than to keep this committee informed about the rapidly growing population of multilingual learners in Union County Public Schools. And so we just wanted to come back, and as you'll see in this presentation, we've had significant growth from when you heard this presentation in September until March, and we just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page and kept you informed. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Daniels.
Thank you, Dr. Tyson, and good morning, board members. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to provide a high-level update as it relates to our multilingual learners, and just to share a few data points at the midpoint time of year. Next slide, please. Yes, I'm sorry, back one. Thank you. So you might recall there are 3 different categories in which we define our multilingual learners. The first category is novice services, followed by intermediate and transitional. So throughout the presentation, we have all of the categories color-coded accordingly. So there has been a steady increase, as Dr. Tyson has mentioned, around the number of multilingual learners that we have here in Union County Public Schools, particularly as it relates to this school year. You might recall back in September, we had a total of 3,468 students. We have increased that by 497 students. And that number tends to increase on a daily basis. So as of March 21st, we had 4,145 students. So as it relates to our multilingual learners, dividing it out by the clusters, we have before you 4 clusters that have the most significant increase of multilingual learners. So starting with the Monroe cluster at 1,129 students, followed by Porter Ridge with 829, Forest Hills with 723 multilingual learners, and Sun Valley at 575. But notice on this particular chart, in the Monroe cluster, underneath the transitional services, we have 522 students that are in that particular category. And what this example means is that we have more students that are remaining in this particular subgroup, and they're not exiting off at the same rate in which they're being added. When we look at the change in multilingual learners population, we dug a little deeper into the level of services. So when you look at the novice service category, in September, we had 18% of our students that were at the novice rate. And that simply means that they scored between a 1 and 2 on the pre-screener for WIDA. By March, that number has increased to 25%. But you might want to note that the intermediate services as well as transitional categories seem to have declined, but that doesn't mean that the number of students within these categories have declined. When we go up in the novice service categories, the other 2 categories tend to decline. So we wanted to take a deeper dive and look at the direct services by the levels. So here is an exemplar of our elementary schools. So we have 14 out of 30 elementary schools, which is 46% of the elementary schools who are servicing students in the novice or intermediate category. Rockrest Elementary has a total of 193 students that are receiving direct services. When we move to the next slide, and look at our middle schools, we have 4 of our 9 middle schools, which is 44% of the middle schools that are also supporting students in direct services, with Monroe Middle leading with 88 students. And finally, looking at our high schools, we also have 4 high schools out of the 13. Monroe High School is leading with 111 students receiving direct services. And you might recall, direct services are in the first 2 categories, novice and intermediate. But what that means is that the students will have to receive 90 minutes of direct support per week. So as we transition to the next slide, back in September, you might recall that we identified 10 schools, 10 of our top schools that had the most significant increase as it relates to our multilingual learners. So those schools include Porter Ridge Middle School from last year. We had Sun Valley High School, as well as Piedmont Middle School, Rockrest Elementary, and what was new to us was Indian Trail Elementary. However, these trends have again changed. So as we transition to the next slide, you'll notice as of March, we have identified new schools. And again, this represents the number of schools with the most rapid increase of multilingual learners. So we have Stallings Elementary, Sun Valley Middle School, Unionville Elementary, Piedmont High School, and Forest Hills. So this is part of the reason why it's important for us to keep a constant gauge on the growing number of multilingual learners that we are servicing and supporting here in Union County Public Schools. And so on the final slide, I just want to remind you that when we first presented this information before you, our district represented 52 languages, with Spanish being the most represented language, followed by Russian and Ukrainian. As of March, we are now supporting and representing 64 of those languages. And just to kind of give you an idea of what those languages are, just a few include the Tibetan, as well as Armenian, Romanian, and Belarusian languages. So it is important, again, for us to continue to keep a constant gauge on our growing number of students. This concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
No.
Okay.
Wow.
Thank you so much. That was very informative
Thank you.
and overwhelming to think about it constantly.
Yes, wow.
increasing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chris,
Yeah.
I'll need you to stop my sharing of the screen.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next meeting date is April 24th at 10 a.m. via Zoom, and I need a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks.
Have a
Y'all
good
have
day,
a good day.
everybody.